Welcome forward to the future, and to Baron's New Vegas gun guides. This episode is a first for the series, both this one and Fallout. The first fully automatic energy weapon that fits into the rifle category, the Laser RCW. Before the rediscovery of this weapon, the only fully automatic energy weapons available to the protagonist of the Wastes are limited to the big guns or heavy weapon category. But with this weapon, the promise of rapid-fire lasers is now attainable to the less well-fed and weaker liberators of the Waste. For most every other energy weapon, the limitation of capacitors for either lasers or plasma limit them to semi-auto fire and a fairly slow fire rate at that. For those without the requisite knowledge in electrical circuits, a capacitor is simply two parallel plates with a semi-resistive dielectric, and it stores a large amount of energy for its size. It is also capable of releasing energy incredibly fast, hence the use in laser weapons especially. But it also requires time to refill its capacity regardless of the power put to it. For this reason, energy weapons have a slow rate of fire, but the people behind the Laser RCW, or the Rapid Capacitor Weapon, found a novel idea. And it was probably H&K, or Heckler & Koch, that came up with the original design, as according to the designer of New Vegas, it would have preempted the Gatling Laser. It takes the simple approach of more capacitors is more better, and they fire their charge in a rotating cycle and recharge just like a Gatling gun. Based on the powerful and iconic M1921 Thompson submachine gun, it mounts the capacitors on a drum device and puts them where the original magazine sat, which gives it a familiar weight and worked perfectly to keep any significant electromagnetic interference from one capacitor to another. Now that we have got to the topic of capacitors, we can discuss basic laser weapon theory, or laser power theory. In several other settings, the laser is typically depicted as pulses of light, most featured in things like Star Wars or Warhammer 40,000. But others depict a long continuous beam that melts all that it touches. The short burst models are much more powerful in theory, because the power of lasers is dependent on energy and the time to give you the power. For lasers with a continuous discharge, they emit the power rating equal to the input of the laser with no consideration for time. These lasers can be exceptionally powerful, cutting steel and welding it back together, but they are big and bulky and require huge constant power supplies, and only for being effective from relatively short ranges. The pulse lasers, however, take the power generated by the batteries and put it to capacitors that discharge the electricity as fast as they can to the laser tube. This causes the emission of light to be exceptionally quick and put out a fair amount of joules or energy. A certain pulse laser of 140 joules, firing in 140 femtoseconds, has a pulse power of 1 petawatt, or 10 to the 15th power watts. Compared to the hundreds or possibly thousands of watts continuous discharge lasers, and you can see that there is a significant difference. The pulse designs are also very big, requiring massive capacitors, but on a handheld scale, a pulse laser will produce significant enough power to injure and kill, while the pulse mechanisms maintain power out to a certain range due to another phenomenon. Now, back to the RCW, one of the smaller pulse lasers that doesn't take up the size of a room. As to guess why it wasn't seen or hinted at in other games, we can only assume the weapons were passed over for Gatling lasers, or hoarded by the Brotherhood of Steel in such numbers that only after the cowling at Helios 1 did the Rapid Capacitor Weapon, or RCW, see the light of day. Similarly, in the cancelled Van Buren project, there was also to be an automatic laser weapon, simply called the Laser Array Gun, at the prototype stage. And this was, in fact, a prototype for the concept, but would have had the Legion and the scientists of Denver involved in its appearance, instead of it just showing up. Now, for stats, the Laser RCW is a little bit more powerful than the AEP-7 laser pistol, given the longer accumulation chamber and probably more capable energy ammo with its electron charge pack. At 15 damage per shot, it is still one below the 9mm, but with a fire rate of 9 shots per second, the RCW can lay down fire with 135 damage per second. Each pack being replaced in 1.8 seconds and holding 60 shots, it has a sustained DPS of 106.7, which is quite good for such a low damage per shot weapon, and it surpasses the damage of the comparable 9mm SMG, although not the Vance 9mm SMG, but it is a unique. With the inbuilt armor-piercing nature of the ammo, the RCW is not as weak as the laser pistol, but it is still low on the level. Now in VATS, it's a little bit more expensive at 20 AP per burst, but fires 3 shots per burst in VATS. This gives it a solid efficiency of 2.3 damage per AP, which for the low absolute cost is amazing for those tight situations. Sadly, the accuracy isn't the greatest, especially for energy weapons, but it is still so much better than any ballistic SMG. With 0 recoil, the spread never gets worse, and with a spread of 0.08, it is only marginally worse than repeaters. Also, due to the windowing of the laser, tracking where your shots went is very easy, and really only the blind would struggle. Crit performance, however, is down a lot. It still does double damage, but the automatic nature means that the crit multiplier is low at only 0.05 times. This is still higher than most automatics, which makes the incidental crit more common. The RCW does have iron sights as well, and they are similar to the ones found on some variants of the Thompson. An aperture sight with tangs on the side to give you some bounding box. It should also be noted for crit performance that the highest possible crit performance you can get in VATS is 26% per shot, which is still quite a bit, but you do have to jump through some hoops to get there. The RCW is more complicated of a laser weapon, requiring 50 energy weapons, and obviously requires some manhandling to use with its strength requirement of 4. It stands right smack dab in the middle ground of energy weapons, and you do get the most laser output at that point in the game with this gun. With requirements greater than the laser pistol and the laser rifle, it is a niche between the two worlds of energy weapons, that being the laser and the plasma one. It's also an expensive piece of equipment, at 2,150 caps, but it is not hard to obtain at certain points. There's also a weapon mod, which works in a weird way, the Laser RCW Recycler, for 1,900 caps. This mod causes every 4th shot to not consume ammo, but they still do consume durability. This in effect gives you 33% more shots per reload, so instead of 60, you get 80. It is one of the few mods that can pay for itself in ammo costs. However, this requires around 2 or 3 RCWs worth of ammo, which is around 3,800 overcharge rounds. That ratio to ammo cost to durability is around the same for the rest of the ammo types. The Laser Recycle is extremely good to get early in the life of your RCW, and so going to the Silver Rush, the Fort if you're a Legion player, or the Vindertron after getting your first one is a great idea. Altogether, this does cost 4,050 caps, and for all that, you do get good durability, which is due to it being an automatic weapon. You almost get 1 shot per cap for the base cost, with the bulk ECP being over that number. You get 2,348 shots of bulk ammo, standard gets 1,995, overcharge is still a very respectable 1,329, and max charge is a cutting it close 795. Now, these do not fire small energy cells or microfusion cells, instead firing a new ammo type for New Vegas, the standard Electron Charge Pack or ECP. It is the cheapest of energy ammo, costing 1 cap per round, and still giving you the -2 DT you expect from energy ammo. Overcharge ammo costs 2 caps per round, and can be made for 3 standard for 2 overcharge. And now this is one of the few money-making schemes with just ammo, especially with the Red Rock armor or the Great Khan armor. The overcharge ECP does 25% more damage, and reduces enemy DT by 5. This comes at the cost of wearing the gun down 50% faster. The max charge ammo costs 2 caps per round as well, but takes 5 standard for 2 max charge ammo, It is not quite the money-making scheme of the other one. Although max charge increases damage by 50% and reduces enemy DT by 10, which makes it quite capable of killing up above its normal stats. This does reduce the life of the RCW, however, by 2.5 times, making a hot-burning but short-lived flame. Now, bulk ammo is the last type and costs only 50 caps for a box of 100. This is incredibly cheap, but it is the usual 85% damage and wear rate. Much like the SEC siding with the Legion or Brotherhood of Steel can net you quite a lot of ammo, although it is still less than the small energy cells. Now it is sad news for uniques, even though in this video I am using the uniques from the Big Meltdown due to a graphical glitch. There are no uniques in the base game or even variants of any kind. For being a new addition to the canon, the RCW would have loved to get a unique looking gun, like the other SMGs. However, for such an expensive weapon and a pretty sought after weapon, the RCW is very easy to get. Like most energy weapons, you can grab it quite quickly from the Silver Rush without paying and on the bodies of some Bright Brotherhood members. Fiends around Vault 3 are slightly more likely to have them, and they do make for a very good source. But also most Fiend corpses, like the ones at the Repcon HQ, can carry them. Scribes at Hidden Valley and Greasy Johnny in North Vegas sewers can carry them, but aren't typically hostile. Prim can have it locked behind a cabinet, but being a higher level is probably important to getting it. But for those with caps, Cliff Brosco Novak and the Vindatron can carry them, and unlike the Van Graffs, they don't leave it in the open. The Laser RCW is actually a great energy weapon in my mind. It's an automatic that shows where it's going unlike any other automatic so far, and uses incredibly cheap and very available ammo if you can get to a merchant. With some methods to get a lot of it for free, the RCW can be fed for quite a long time, and its laser can easily cut down most enemies with its alternate ammo. And it also happens to be one of the best energy weapons for cazadors. Combined with its very classical look, this is a weapon that can get you across the wasteland in style.